Hi. Well, welcome to the last session of the day. I'm glad we still have a few smiling faces in the room. I'll try and make this as practical as I can. I've seen lots of things here over the last couple of days around futurist and social collaboration and where things are going. And what I thought I'd come along today to do is share sort of some of the things we've been doing at Western Union to really have it learner-led in terms of learning versus always business-driven. So really sort of a more fully integrated approach by leveraging software to help us do that. Let me get my clicker right. So Western Union are a global company and we have many challenges, the same as probably a lot of challenges that any company has who are working globally. So there's acquisitions, so recruitment of more and more people joining the business at different levels of understanding of different products and solutions. Our products and solutions change all the time. We come up with new ones. How do we get that learning across to our teams? We have sales teams who are remotely based, and whilst we have learning and development in our regions, you know, they're not in every single country. So I might have one learning and development person that covers the whole of Europe, but then I have 11 countries. How do we get the learning across when I have one person covering all of that? We also have as I said, continue developing products and services, we have to get it right. So we're a financial services company, so there's some compliance challenges there. And again, we need to make sure that, you know, the right training happens at the right time, but also that we're driving learners to want to learn and want to develop as well. So there's always a challenge with that. So just to give you a bit of a background around our sort of move to a more integrated approach. It goes back to about 2008, 2009, where in some regions we actually had an LMS, so some people were using, some of our areas are using e-learning and sort of a system to actually leverage learning, but we had different platforms for our performance measurement and really no consistency around induction and training in general. So we were really seeking something, you know, a company that would work with us and have sort of a similar roadmap in terms of our growth plans, so could really start to kind of grow with us as a business and help deal with some of those challenges I talked around at a global level to support the users and learners locally. And on that basis, after doing lots of research, we actually chose Cornerstone On Demand, who were our platform, and we went through sort of a modular approach. So we started off, as is probably sensible, with sort of one module and got that right, and then bought another module and so on, really, to build into this more integrated approach. So in 2010, we started to work with them with their social collaboration side. So more about leveraging those subject matter experts to really help us in those countries where even with some of our products and solutions, the product owners might be based in one country, but we're global. So how do we share the knowledge of that individual? So it was really sort of working on a more sort of social collaboration so that they could start to, you know, do blogs, wikis, etc., to really share their knowledge with people and get people up to speed and getting the answers that they need quicker and more efficiently. There's also communities, so we can actually link, you know, similar roles that are similar with the right topics. They can actually have that as actually a common community. And then more recently, over the last sort of 18 months or so, we've been looking more at a competency-based learning. So really looking at what does good look like for, say, a new joiner in the first sort of, you know, 3 months of joining a company? How can we get our sales teams productive quicker? So if in the first 3 months, what does good look like? What does the next 3 to 6 months look like? And having sort of a consistent approach globally. So we work very much around sort of what they call observation checklists. So what does good look like for each salesperson? Is that sales skills or is that product? It was both. And then also assessments as well, more around leadership we use this for. So, you know, what does a good leader look like? And what does competence then, measuring that competence to help our leaders be more effective at managing and leading teams. We wanted to move away from sort of your annual performance reviews, which for some managers are really good and effective, and they regularly meet with their teams. A quarterly was what we would ask as a minimum. Did we know that was happening? Possibly not. So, you know, you ended up with some sort of paper all dusted down, or you know, some of it's electronic but printed and cobwebbed and not really looked at for how many months on time till it came to that end of year where we needed to do ratings, and all of a sudden some managers were then having conversations. Development plans as well, you know, have these great conversations with our people, but then are they referred to again, or do they just sort of disappear into the black hole and are never referred to? And then knowledge, I've got it shrinking there. And I think that's, the whole company's changing quickly and we need to keep on top of that. But also, if people decide to move on in their careers and we lose a subject matter expert, what happens to that knowledge? And we get a new person in and where do they start? They're almost starting again from scratch. So we really needed to work on getting something much more practical and relevant to help us sort of continually grow and enable people to learn. Obviously drive more meaningful performance discussions. So if we had it all in one place and actually it was more driven through the system, that would then help us have consistency globally. I said earlier about rapid connection to knowledge. So how do I find out the answer? Sort of some quick answers for people to find. And the ultimate aim of any business is to get people productive quicker and selling things that make you money quicker. So that really was the aim. And in order to do that, we need to do a number of things. Obviously, have some performance discussions, making sure it was happening more of the time and all of the time. Moving away from learning and development, always being responsible for everything. Our managers work more closely with the teams, and it's more of a partnership approach in terms that we're there to support, but really the manager is there in terms of measuring competence. As learning and development, I can't measure competence in a role. That's somebody, doing the job and deciding what good looks like. So becoming more competent as well needs relevant training to support that. So, what actually would help me get to that gap that I have. And as I say, move from just in case to just in time training. So rather than sort of sheep dip people to say, this is coming up, do I need it? More of a get the learner to drive their own learning by seeking out in their communities or with the subject matter experts to find out the answer that will help them. So as I say, we introduced observation checklists and competency assessments, really leveraging more of that informal social collaboration, blogs, wikis, forum discussions, etc., and created an environment for rapid collaboration. So this is sort of an example of some of our observation checklists, and they're great in terms of making our conversations with our employees much more productive and effective around what, again, where are they in terms of performance, but also where are those training gaps, so we can identify those, and also facilitates coaching. So the conversations that we're having are a lot more effective with our people. And of course the manager or the subject matter expert even can actually sign off competence in that particular area. So competency assessments, you can measure, just go back one, sorry. So we can do competency assessments, and we did this on leadership. So, myself could measure myself against some leadership competencies, and then my direct reports and my manager will do the same ratings, etc. And that will give me a 360 review on how I am as a leader. And I do like this little pussycat. So, this for me means two things. One is actually some people think they're better than they are. So, if you're having competency measurement, are you seeing something in the mirror that other people are definitely not seeing? And there's a bit of a reality check there. But also this is about future development in terms that I join a company, maybe a junior role, I want that job. What does it take to get to that job? So I can clearly see my performance, where my performance needs to be, and my knowledge and my experience to get to a particular role. So they're dynamically assigned. As I said, you can even get peer assessment as well as direct reports and managers. And it clearly defines what it means to be competent. And also one of the great things you can do on an integrated platform is actually drive the right learning to fill those gaps. So you can actually pull those assessments to give you those gaps. So on our particular example, we had a rating of 1 to 5. If yourself scored yourself less than 3, or your manager or your directs came out as an average of less than 3, then it will produce a development plan for you, where then you can begin to sort of, as a manager, start to coach your directs on where is the development and give you some recommended training. So this is just an example of the questions and the ratings. And you get your scores where it tells you whether you've been 3 or above, and that would suggest that, there's no immediate development need. But the ones in our particular example was where less than 2 or 1 would indicate that you actually had a gap. And then your performance, your development plan then would come through with some suggested learning, and as a manager you can also add different ones onto that, so you can pull that from other things, but it would base it on the particular gap in the competence around where the development suggestions would be. So that could be setting up a mentoring piece, shadowing other people, whatever that looks like, that can all be built in. So again, shifting from providing training to providing support. So it really is good at formalising all the informal learning as well. So areas sort of, the formal stuff will happen. We sometimes need to test people around compliance. There's some induction. They might need to come on some workshops, etc. There might be some webinars that people attend. But really a lot of the learning has been very much around the conversations over the last couple of days is sort of working within our subject matter experts or our communities to actually continually learn. So it is around kind of formalising more of that informal learning that takes place all of the time. So just some example development plans there. As I said, it has some combinations of different recommendations of learning based on the competency gaps. So it could be any e-learning, and all this is all again in one place. And wikis, blogs, forums. So really encouraging people to share their success. Subject matter experts to blog and talk about what's new in their solution or their products that are coming out, and great things like this, such as sharing sort of quick cheat sheets, quick guides to how to, rather than going through necessarily a Captivate recording of 15 minutes or whatever. So it just practically can just sit there. Subject matter expert questions, so people can actually flag questions and link that to subject matter experts. Then the answer is shared, so again, if somebody else has a question of the same, it will be there. Communities, as I talked about earlier, people can rate stuff. So very similar to all the things that you see as well. You've also got a moving sort of homepage as well, which can drive things. So sharing success, like a sales leaderboard, etc. Sort of driving, changing this quite frequently. We do ours weekly, just to keep it fresh and drive kind of new results. So quick wins with customers, sharing success, etc. Yeah, and the salespeople can gloat about their glory if they like to as well, which is great, and we can rate them. So just quickly, if I've got time, a quick a look at how we onboard people, so a sort of employee life cycle. So here's Dave. And basically, before Dave joins the company, you can actually set up the system to restrict what he can actually see, but begin to welcome him into the business, so he can begin to find out a little bit more about the business that you're happy to share before somebody actually starts on day one. And what a great welcome to the company, in terms of, things he can find out that he hasn't just seen on the internet to get his job interview and get the job in the first place. So lots of things that a new joiner can actually look at before they join. And then once they join, we actually have different things around onboarding, so lots of curriculums around induction, around all of our products and sales, but also, if you're in a particular role such as sales, what does good look like? So as a learner, as a new person coming into a company, as an employee, I've got a job spec, but now I've also got a competency checklist that can really show me what I'm expected to be at in 3 months' time. And that drives the right behaviours to actually learn. So it's not just being done to me. I know that I need to pass this at 3 months as such, or be marked off as competent. So it actually drives me to seek out additional learning, shadow somebody else, rather than it being just given to me, spoon-fed. So it drives the right behaviours. And compliance, as I said, we're a financially regulated company, so he can't escape the compliance murderous training that we all have to do if you're in financial services. So, he'll get the right competency and checklist and the right training curriculum. It's all dynamically set up, so we can do everything by user type in terms of where they sit in functions within the company. And of course, we want him to continually develop his skills. So it could be that in 3 to 6 months he gets a different competency checklist, but other things as well around his development in the company. He'll also have the manager will sign off, or a subject matter expert will sign off the competencies, but obviously, as good practice, he will also have objectives and other things to achieve. And again, driving his own self-learning, he will look to collaborate and connect with people in the business that are going to help him be successful. So lots of areas that he can look at. Oh, here we go. So as I said, all the performance management as well is in one place. You've got all the learning, all the informal stuff that you might have driven from a development plan that's recorded. You have all the objectives in one place, competencies assigned, all to help performance, so to get somebody productive for you very quickly. And interestingly, with this year, what we've done as well around performance management is actually drive a 6-month mid-year review as well, which has been very helpful, again, for managers that don't naturally meet with their people as we'd like them to. And again, sort of make sure that that's happening, so it enables us to do that. And at the end, all the annual performance review and everything pulls through, all in the same platform. And the great thing is you can also pull reports. So any analytics on his training, has he completed it, anything overdue, the competencies, that can all be done as well. How much of a percentage progress is he through that, etc. And then also obviously identify top talent. So if he's coming out as a high-performing person, what's the next step for him? So we can begin to retain people and point the right high performers into the right areas. Retention as well is also about retaining knowledge. So we'd like to think that with Dave as well, he'll start to blog and share his own experiences and successes with the wider business. And thus, should he move on to different things, then we retain a lot of that knowledge as well, because it doesn't disappear just because Dave leaves us. So that's the journey of a person developing through our company. Just some lessons learned on the way, because it always sounds so easy when you stand and talk about something that's taken really 4 years in the making and is still dynamically growing as we do it, and we learn all the time. Around competencies, it's fairly obvious that it has to be easy for managers to sign off. So it has to be relevant and practical, but also, it actually works globally. So we haven't got different ones for different countries. They're actually, based on the skill set. And people can really interpret them correctly, and it can be observable behaviour. Really test things, so make sure that it works, so pilot things, get some feedback, etc., because otherwise it can be quite challenging. Again, don't overcomplicate things, build on it, do little things at little steps at a time. There's a lot of work that sits behind this sort of thing, and you need the commitment and the resources and sponsorship really to make it effective. And that lends very nicely into sell. You're going to need some people in your business that are going to be advocates for you, but also literally keep communicating and selling how great it is, because I suppose like any of the things like Facebook or LinkedIn, it started off very small and grew, and that's the same as starting off with any social collaboration tool in a company. It has to gather momentum, and the only way you can do that is to keep selling it. So give people reasons to come back to that homepage, keep changing it, sharing successes of people. I want to be on that board. Why aren't I in the top 10 or the top 20 people, and so on. So play to that. Get some subject matter experts to talk about some really interesting things that are happening in the business, create some excitement and value. And as I said, take small chunks and get some wins on the board to make all the work worth it. And look to celebrate some mini wins. That's it. Thank you.
Some good practical tips and lots of ideas coming out there. Who's going to be first? Am I? I am. No, I'm not. I've been gazumped. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Thank you. You talked at the end there about giving people a reason to come back. Just was interested in your experience on what the main reasons are why people come back from that.
Okay, so the actual platform itself is all incorporated. So single sign-on for one, so you make it very easy for people to access it. It's the first page that comes up when they open Internet Explorer, so it's there every day. And that home page, if you keep changing that, then people will actually notice there's something changed, where if every day you open the same page, then really you start to get used to the visuals and you probably don't bother. So change things around and whatever else. So we've got a very talented guy that can do that for us, that actually manages our platform. So one of the things I think that you shouldn't underestimate is you need somebody focused on it. It is a full-time job really in terms of getting everything worked, tested, etc. To make it really work. I think in some of the people I've been networking over the last couple of days with is where things haven't worked is because they're trying to do other jobs at the same time. So if you're juggling too many things, it doesn't become a priority, and it really needs the impetus and sales piece to get it working. Those are the two main ones, I think. Yeah, and I think if you with new people, it's great when they come in because it's not something they've always known. So provided we get them introduced to it early on, they'll end up blogging and sharing things very quickly. It's the people that have been with us for a while that they're a little bit shy, which is unusual for salespeople. But sometimes they're a bit reticent. And again, I went to Jane's social collaboration piece yesterday, if any of you were in there, and it was very much around, there always will be people that will not comment and contribute and stuff. That doesn't mean they're not reading it, and it doesn't mean they're not learning from it. It just means that they actually won't respond or whatever to things. And I think definitely having people who are your experts, so driving things from, really if you own a product or a solution or you're in compliance or something, and you've really got to keep those messages fresh and keep people informed. It's keeping it alive and moving, I think, would be the biggest thing.
And Michelle, do you do that generically, or do you make it that come on different for different groups?
No, that's all for everybody. The things that are generic, that is generic. The things that are all specific are more the competency checklist, which will be by specific skill sets. We've tried to avoid roles. It's getting to the point where I think we might need to go into roles now because we just do. The roles they're just too many different roles, and we need to play. Again, with Simon's piece, again, if any of you were in the last session with the Lloyds Bank example, it's getting to that point where I think we need capability by role and making sure then that the competences are real, where at the minute what we tried to do was keep it very generic. So if there's a particular product that we want people to be competent at the value proposition and positioning it out to our customers, we tried to keep that as, well, if you're selling it, it doesn't matter what role you're in, that's what competent looks like. But I think we're getting to the point now where we want capability in with roles. So that's something that's changing for us.
Because what strikes me here is that the more engaging it is, the more it applies to the what's in it for me factor. But the closer you get to the what's in it for me, the less you'll appeal to the other 90% of the people. Seems to be the conundrum there. In tackling, what we're saying is, you want to make it refreshing, you want to make it so that people keep coming back, but they've got to be able to relate to it. Yes, that's very much the point.
And I think it's always, that's what I said at the start, it's always dynamically growing. So we've moved on massively in the last 18 months with it, and I think people as well are, most people now are on Facebook, where probably 18 months ago, some people were still probably not going to be bothered with that sort of stuff. And even LinkedIn probably more recently, just because from a recruitment perspective, that's been more attractive. So I think it's just like any social networking thing, it has to draw people to it, but contributing to it is something that you continually try and drive subject matter experts or key leaders in your business to actually blog and use it, and then other people use it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you doing a certain amount of goal setting? I don't need that.
He doesn't need that.
Goal setting for individuals. There's okay. Are you doing a certain amount of goal setting for individuals, or are you just allowing them to develop to a particular level of everything they're doing from social networking through to self-paced learning and all the other activities that you imagine either helps bring their competence together, which then needs checking, because I imagine someone above them is helping set those levels, and how are you measuring that as well, as to how often people are going to do self-paced learning, or you're going to go back to them again and help them regenerate, refresh competencies. You did talk, I must admit, you did do something that I hadn't thought of before, is it's not just an initial check with someone and then go back again a little bit later, but there seems to be some further integration that you personally will have with those individuals. But what are your key points, on that line of development of the individual?
Okay. Well, I think where we focused is very much on, we know that if we get induction right and our new people coming in and get them up to speed quicker, they begin to bring money in quicker, and that makes them more productive, etc. So where we've really focused is that kind of first 18 months into a company for sort of sales, revenue driving people, because that's our biggest win. As I said, I think we need to now think about more other roles, that they're all valuable, obviously, in terms of doing that. And then those development things that pull through, they're sort of suggested ones that we would offer. So classrooms, depending on the need, classroom, webinar, e-learning, whatever that looks like, or shadowing or whatever. And then the manager can tweak that. So the development plan is still very much with the manager and the learner. But we would just, as L&D and working and knowing the business, we would have suggested things based on the gap and what we believe might help solve that gap. But it's continual. The great thing is with the development plans is you can actually just make your own action points up. So you could either have it as an action point or go and set it as a KPI, as a goal. So as a manager, for instance, if I was managing somebody who wasn't yet competent, I would then set them goals on where they need to get competent. Because for me, it needs a goal to do that. Whereas some managers might not do that, but they'll end up getting an overdue reminder that this individual isn't yet competent. And for us, the first 3 months into a business anyway, generally most people are on probation. So actually those first 3 months are key, and it's in the interest of the manager to provide that support, because otherwise they're looking at performance managing somebody out or not making them permanent, which has a consequence of costs and everything else. So. Does that answer everything you wanted? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, are there things you would do differently after those 4 years of experience?
Would there be things I'd do differently?
Or what you're prepared to admit to today?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, when you first launch with something like this, you really try and sell it. So you kind of might do desktops, you might kind of get people to email with links and get people into it. And I think it needs kind of constant drive. We're working very hard at the moment on getting feedback from the guys on, how are you using it, what are you using it for, why aren't you using it, so that we can start to drive and really understand what it would take to drive more traffic to it. What I know is that if we took it away, the guys would miss it. That sounds really quite strange. I don't think they really understand the value until we stopped it. And I think if one day they couldn't get on it, they'd be like, oh, hang on a minute, where do we go for that? I think there's almost that you take it for granted that something's there. And I think where we probably need to get better, and we're really driving that now, we're part of Western Union, because when you're going through a big acquisition, it's really tough, because you're going through all the mergers of people, the mergers of platforms, and integration of everything, and it all gets a bit crazy. What we're driving for this year very much is now the structures and everything's changing and coming into sort of more normality a year in, is that we're getting those kind of heads off to start to drive more things through Connect. So it's actually going to be better for me to be following and connected to those people and really keep up to speed. And certainly if I know what success looks like and who's looking at this, it's almost it's driving that behaviour to pull people towards something rather than push them. You can't really push them to it. So it's making it more attractive and more valuable to them. So I think it's the contributors. We need more at that level. So in terms of what I would do differently, I'd probably put more resources at it, if I'm honest, because again, it's difficult with Jerome's, return on investment. I know that it makes a huge difference. Can I prove that? Again, if I took it away, I could, because I think people would yelp and whatever else. But we're working very hard now on how can we start to put more metrics around some of the things we're doing, and is it making a difference?
Thank you. And Jerome, one for you. But when I looked at the model, and I relate that model to Charles Jennings' 70-20-10, I kind of get the feeling that would work for the 10, but how does it work for the other part? Am I missing something, or...?
No, we've been working together with Charles. What you've seen is, yes, it seems to be very formal what you've seen on the screen lately, because you have a starting point, you have a closing event, so it seems that it's it really is a learning sequence. But in the blocks where you see mentoring, when you see the workplace assignment, this is very informal. So how can we monitor that? It's mainly in the way we have two levels we can monitor that. It's how the tools are used, or the protocols are used. This is the first thing. And is it creating more value? These are you can go back and forth all the time. So we have to ask the managers and the learners what they think about the way they are learning, the way they're interacting together, interacting with their manager, and what they think about the tool, the collaborative platform, and things like that. But also you can measure the break-even of the whole process. So it's not only formal, but it's not very clear that there are a lot of informal parts in this curriculum.
Because to me that really is the interesting issue. So many people I find that are tackling how do I measure informal learning, look at where was the source of the informal learning, and did they pull it from the web or did they pull it from here, which at the end of the day is entirely irrelevant. It's the fact that they got it that's relevant, and the extent to which it's reduced time to competence.
We can't monitor the conversation that will happen just next to the coffee machine, but it can be seen as learning. The idea is if we create this environment that supports learning, then the ROI will be better, and we can assume that the whole thing has created value, more value than we used to do when it was only formal. So it's not scientific, and a lot of companies I'm working with are using estimates, for instance, because they think that it's too complicated to have statistic models. They don't have the competencies. They don't have time for that. It's too costly. So what they do is we are gathering together around a table with managers and say, okay, you have this problem, or you have this thing that you want, this issue you want to address. Okay, what do you think are the different levels? Okay, this, and that, and learning. Okay, and what, to your point of view, if we want to isolate the impact of learning, what is the contribution of learning? Okay, 30%? Okay, so we're going to define the value created, and we're going to take the 30%. We don't care if it's not scientific. At the end of the day, if the manager think that the learning created 30% of the value or solve a problem at a level of 30%, it's great. And we don't need these, we don't need to be scientific. What we need is the managers to be involved, and we need to create value. At the end of the day, it's very difficult to isolate the impact of learning. So if the managers are happy with the 30%, it's perfect for me.
Thank you very much. I'm coming back.
I just wanted to ask a quick commercial question, whether you've actually looked at the commercial side of whether you have any yardsticks for that. But if somebody's got an annual budget or a rollout for a big program across all this, do you have any metrics on what people ought to be allowing percentage-wise for doing the evaluation study, and also the return on the investment of doing that evaluation study?
So if I understand well, the question is practical things or practical examples. This is what, or...
It's what percentage, it used to be a fund years ago, which is that if you have a budget, you need to allow 10%, you ought to allow 10% for the evaluation of that project. And no one ever did allow 10% in my experience. And I just wonder whether this is somewhere you have that same sort of metric in your study.
It's almost a case of how do you do the ROI on the ROI?
Yes, the ROI of the ROI. Yes, well, the metrics usually we're talking about 10% for communication, 10% for evaluation, and 80%. And you can split also for instructional design, things like that. I think that 10% is okay, but I'm currently working with a company that does not have this 10% because they've spent so much in designing a new induction program. So what we've done is we are doing simple things. We're doing focus groups. We are trying to evaluate the total cost of ownership of the new solution and comparing it with the previous solution and trying to see where the break-even will be. So this is not 10%. You know, we're not investing that much. What I think is, as soon as it becomes complex or costly, it means that we've lost the way. It has to remain simple. It's easy to say, so I know.
Thank you. I'm very conscious that, as in Latin, it was, I think, tempus fugit, and so tempus, I think, is largely fugited this afternoon. So please thank our presenters this afternoon. A really interesting presentation, Jerome and Michelle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.